Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park. And today we bring you our first read of Multo by Cindy Fassi. And this book is very much a thriller, detective-y kind of book.
Yep.
But within it, there's certain parts that are reflected back to the Philippines. And one of them is what we're going to find out in our read, which is that Monica, who's one of the main characters in this, her mother is said to have been passed away in a jeepney in the Philippines. Now, I've never been to the Philippines. I've only seen pictures, and I know that jeepneys are kind of a staple for the Philippines, and I think more mainly Manila or like the bigger cities.
Definitely. It's definitely a city-wide public transit choice.
Right. So can you explain what jeepneys are and what your thoughts are on them?
Definitely. So jeepneys are essentially these long buses, open-air buses.
So no windows that are covering, like open windows.
Yes, the windows are open, the doors, there's really no doors either. So people can hop on and hop off.
No seatbelts.
No seatbelts. Your seatbelt is if you're sitting on someone's lap, they're your seatbelt. And there really is no... Some of them don't have windshields either. So, I mean, I think they have windshields because how else do they see in the rain?
With their eyes.
For sure. So, open air buses,
Yeah.
public transit.
I think they do have windshields from the pictures that I've seen out
For sure. I think they do have windshields. I think that's the only window that they have is a windshield.
Yeah.
And because they run through the city very frequently, you can trust that they're going to go in a particular direction because they say on the side of their vehicle, they're going to Quiapo City, they're going to Pasig, and you can trust that they're going to get there, but you're not sure what time. You just know that they'll be there.
So they run like buses without schedules.
Yes, exactly.
I'm assuming that you have to pay to get on a jeepney.
Oh, absolutely.
So the interesting thing is, with as popular as jeepneys are, from the point that I have now seen jeepneys because they're so widespread through different Filipino groups and social media things that I see. But recently the Philippines have planned, I think in the next 2 years or a year or so.
Definitely very soon.
Yeah, to completely outlaw or get rid of all the jeepneys in the city.
Yes, and the reason is to address the climate issue.
Is it because it just takes up a lot of gas?
It takes up a lot of gas, but they also only run on diesel. So they're one of the biggest polluters in terms of air pollutants. However, what's interesting is that these jeepneys, the reason why they're so easily accessible to families to start these businesses is because they are repurposed vehicles. So it's a win-lose situation in that they're keeping these vehicles from going into the landfills, but because they run on diesel, they are creating air pollutants. So I think a better solution would be to not completely remove the jeepneys, but pay these families to change the diesel into gasoline, or maybe not even gasoline, like try to find a way to get them to become EVs.
Right, and that's something that they've changed here in Portland is a lot of the major buses here, not all I don't think, but I think that's the goal, is to get all the buses running on some form of an electric vehicle.
Right, exactly.
But, I mean, it's different here because our systems are running through the government. It sounds like jeepneys are more privately owned base structures.
They are privately owned, which is why it's going to be such a big hit. Not only will it affect the families who run the businesses, but it will affect the families who rely on these businesses.
Right. Because I've heard a lot of pushback against this, which is weird because the people that I hear pushing back against it are actually the people that would usually be climate change people, like people that are trying to pursue more and more of a healthy environment for the earth.
Right.
So it was this catch-22 of something that I read of, I don't understand why this pollutant is actually something that people are wanting. And it makes so much sense when we look at how little support in some ways that the Philippine government gives its people.
Exactly.
And so it is kind of sad to see this going, but it's a very current topic, so we'll see where it really goes. I mean, it seems like the actual ruling is in place, but it'd be really cool of the government to fund these families and maybe give them a certain amount so that they can regain some form of a jeepney type of model so that they can regain their economy, because what are they going to do now if they lose their main form of income?
Right.
Anyways, That's the sad part of it.
Yes.
But if you had more interest in things like jeepneys and Philippines culture and you kind of wanted to start getting your hand in Tagalog, you might be interested in our recommendation for the week.
Our recommendation for the week is Tagalog Time with Pat. Pat is a Tagalog enthusiast who teaches Tagalog phrases and context through social media. You can learn more about their work via Instagram at tagalogtime.pat and on YouTube at tagalogtimepat. You can also support them by purchasing merch at stand.store/tagalogtimepat.
And she's someone that I've been following for quite a while. I've honestly haven't been following it close enough because I still haven't learned that much Tagalog. But I think the cool thing that she does that's different from what a lot of other language learning type of social media content does is she not only teaches you certain parts of the language, but she teaches you how to use the language. So different things like how to use po and how to use different introductions. So it's really cool. She also is very much a contributor to her own culture because if you follow her on Instagram, you'll find that she actually puts up different sites and places where you can purchase things like Filipinianas, paroles. And yeah, she sells her own lessons. So she's a really cool resource to kind of get into if you are curious about learning Tagalog.
Absolutely. And for those who are unsure of what po means, it's the formal way of addressing ma'am, sir, or honored guest.
And you'll find that on Tagalog Time Pat.
Yes.
And that's our recommendation for the week. Okay, so first read of Multo by Cindy Fazzi. We read chapters 1 through 9, and that was pages 1 through 75 on the physical copy.
Yes.
So let's get into the book. We are introduced pretty quickly into two main characters throughout this whole thing.
Right.
The first main character is the narrative that I think we follow the most.
Yes.
And that's Domingo, who also goes by the name of
Sunday.
Which is really sad. And he does explain why he puts it in this way, and he explains it multiple times of why he does want to be called Sunday instead of Domingo.
Right.
But it feels like a very oppressed mindset to then go by that. But anyways, the thing that I do appreciate, though, is that the book still calls him Domingo. Right,
exactly. I kind of wish that he instead called himself Dom so that he could be
all
Fast
about
and
family. So Domingo is a bounty hunter in a way, or he specifically deals with immigration.
He's a bail enforcement officer, which people just refer to him as a bounty hunter.
Right, so he's like the Mandalorian, but for immigrants.
Yes, unfortunately.
Illegal immigrants, I should say.
Undocumented
immigrants, sorry. So Domingo himself came to the States and he's become a citizen.
Naturalized citizen, yes.
Yep. And he is chasing these people down who are undocumented or who haven't had the opportunity to go through citizenship or some kind of visa.
Right. And usually the individuals that he is chasing after also have committed felonies.
Right. Or, some kind of crime. And he calls them two things. And I thought this part was really interesting in the beginning of the book. So one of the things he calls them are desperate bastards, which is a very interesting term. And the way he explains himself, it doesn't make it any better, but it makes it so that we can see his narrative and his viewpoint of why he thinks that way.
Right.
The other thing he calls people that are undocumented that he's chasing down is multo. And multo in Tagalog, I think, because he wrote Filipino.
It's Tagalog.
Okay. It means ghost.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a cool, interesting name to give these people that he is chasing after.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest multo is Monica Reed.
Yes. And what we learn from this read is that Domingo was able to, quote-unquote, catch this multo, Monica Reed, twice, but, quote-unquote, lost her.
Right. And so he's been hired to chase after Monica by the same people.
Yes.
And what he's currently doing in our read is being hired by the same family.
Yes.
But seemingly for a different purpose.
Right.
But let's go through the first two incidences of him catching Monica, because that's kind of where the story fades in and out of. Like we go from present time to past time and then kind of bounce in and out of it. Yep.
Yes, definitely. So the first time was in 1998, where the Reed family, specifically General Reed, who is allegedly Monica's father, wants to deport her. And the reason why is because she's an illegitimate child.
Right. And I think at this point he was running for some kind of office, or he had a high-profile position. No,
he was trying to be a CIA director.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yep.
And so he didn't want this to be a stain on his record, which is a really mean thing to call somebody.
Yeah, someone who's essentially your child.
Right. But to General Reed, it doesn't seem like he really cares. It's not like they've had a relationship this whole time.
Not at that time, no. He was very much certain that he didn't want to have any relationship with her. He kind of was even certain that, oh, she's not my child. Just get her away from this country as fast as you can.
Right. And for Domingo, it actually was a pretty easy catch.
Mm-hmm.
The first time, he kind of just ran into her.
Yes.
And he was able to apprehend her.
Mm-hmm.
But ended up letting her go because he had some sympathy for the current situation that she was in.
Essentially, she was crying and he didn't know what to do with tears. And
Fair.
He was like, well, you're not going to hurt anybody, so go.
Yeah, and she hadn't committed a crime. That's the big difference between this person that he was chasing down and the other people that he would normally grab.
Exactly.
So she escapes through like a bus of other people, and then Domingo has to tell the general that he couldn't apprehend her, or she had escaped.
Right.
Which kind of stains his career a little bit for a short period of time.
Right. His reputation gets a little ruined by this unfortunate accident.
But he's so good at his job that it doesn't matter. He's still one of the top bail enforcement officers.
Yes.
So he gets hired back by General Reed again, but for a completely different purpose.
Yes. In 2008, 10 years later, he wants to bring back Monica because his health is failing.
Right.
And although first his intention was to have her give him her kidney since his were failing.
Right.
Instead, once Domingo caught her, he eventually was like, I just want to make amends.
Which I thought was BS. Like, just from the way that the story was told, it sounded like General Reed was trying to play reverse psychology.
Right.
And was like, no, I don't need your kidney. I just want you to be here, and I felt bad, so I want to give you citizenship and get this all worked out for you.
Right.
And even when Monica was like, no, let's figure this out. Maybe I'll do this for you if you are my father. General Reed kept saying like, no, I'll just die. And it's like, as crappy as you were the first time for the reason that you were, it would not make sense based on your character that all of a sudden you're this sweet person that wants to create a new relationship with this daughter of yours.
Exactly. And that becomes even more clear because he made sure that Domingo didn't leave during this exchange.
Not only that, but we know, based off of the third time that he's trying to catch her, that she doesn't have her citizenship.
Right.
Because the third time is the present day.
Right, exactly. And in the present, it becomes a little more complex. Domingo is trying to catch Monica for a third time, but this time is not to reconcile with her father, but reconcile with her stepmother.
Right, because I think General Reed has passed at this time,
yes,
right?
At this point, General Reed has passed.
And Monica's stepmother is trying to find her because the stepmother actually wants to do the right thing and give her citizenship. Or, as far as we know, that is her intention.
I think she's trying to give her inheritance rather than a citizenship.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and so by giving her an inheritance, she then can get a lawyer to gain her citizenship.
Right. Which she doesn't have, which means that the kidney thing was all messed up.
Right, exactly.
So let's talk about where we are in the present day.
Mm-hmm.
So this story is definitely intermingled between past and present.
Yes.
So I kind of got lost as I was reading the chase downs and things like that.
For sure.
Especially the first one when Domingo had apprehended Monica. I was like, oh, this is going to be a short book. Why was this so easy? And I was like, oh no, they're going into the past. So I did get a little bit confused on that part. But in the present day, Domingo is searching for her and going after two major people that he believes has the source of information of where Monica is.
Right. So these two people that Domingo believes has information are Cutter, who was the general's best friend or hired help. We're not sure what he truly was.
Right.
And Christian Price, who was Monica Reed's lover.
Right. And Cutter doesn't seem to be that much help.
No, not at all.
But seems a little sketchy.
Super sketchy in that all he wants is money, and he also acts as if he has none.
Right, and from my perspective, I thought he genuinely doesn't have money. And it's weird because General Reed had money. And
a lot of it.
Yeah, and if you're his hired help, wouldn't you think that you would also have money, because they explained that relationship more like a close friendship than anything else. But as we start reading into chapters 8 and 9, that starts to become a little skeptical.
Right, for sure. I mean, he could have just used all the money at strip clubs.
True, because that's where they meet up.
Yes, where Domingo and Cutter meet up, yes.
Right. Anyway, and Cutter really just gives very little information besides the fact that he thinks Christian Price is the one that knows where Monica actually is.
Right, and he believes Christian Price is the one to go after because he's the one who has the most motive.
Right.
As a married person.
Right, and what is the relationship with Christian Price and Monica?
So Christian Price and Monica are having an affair behind Christian Price's wife.
Right. She the mistress.
Yes, she is the mistress.
And he is the mister that Domingo is hunting down. And
yes.
Domingo does find Christian Price, but also gets very little information.
It seems like he's hiding information.
Right. Domingo's been told that Monica's mother has passed away in the Philippines. And so as far as Christian says that he knows of, Monica is now in the Philippines.
Right, because he's the one who paid for the ticket for her to go, and he claims that she texted him when she arrived.
In the Philippines.
In the Philippines, yes.
And then Domingo asked the question of, like, how do you know the text came from the Philippines?
Right.
I was like, man, that's smart. I would have never thought about that.
Right.
I was like, it just came from the Philippines. How do you know it didn't come from the Philippines?
Exactly. And, like, if it's coming from the same number, it cannot have come from the Philippines.
True. Right. Wow. You're a detective.
Oh, wow.
So he also goes to one other person who is Monica's friend?
Her best friend.
Right. Tess Chua?
Yes.
Chua.
Tess Chua.
Tess Chua. And she actually has the most information out of all the people that Domingo's met.
At least she's revealed more information than anyone else.
Yeah, inadvertently almost.
Inadvertently, because she doesn't know what Domingo knows.
Right.
And she's the only one who actually explained how her mother died, which you mentioned earlier. Spoiler alert. Yeah. Her mother died from a jeepney accident.
Right. And it was an accident.
Yes.
It was something that seemed like it was a pretty big incident.
Right.
And Domingo's suspicious that Christian Price didn't mention that it was an accident.
Exactly.
Right. That is kind of where we leave off. A lot of this first read was character development and figuring out who these people were and kind of getting a sense of what their motives or their true personalities might be.
Exactly. And also just getting a glimpse of what has happened so far to get them here.
Right. And so for this book, we have 4 reads, right?
Yes.
And to me, the usage of this first 25% of the book seems rightfully done. Like, it seems like the author did a really great job of building us the story that is in her head.
Yes.
And then so now we can start moving forward to hopefully what's going to happen in the actual story.
Absolutely.
How did you feel about all of it?
I felt that the book's pacing moved quickly, and which is very necessary for a thriller, because without that quick pacing, we would have lost a lot of the suspense.
And I did the audiobook. You did the physical copy, right?
Yes, exactly.
So in the audiobook, it was really well done. I don't know if it was one narrator or several, because the voices were so good. And so I usually hate the dramatic voices, which is one of the things I really didn't like about The Boy with the Bookstore reading. But in this one, Domingo has a Filipino accent. So you're like, you know that that's Domingo. You hear the other characters and they're very specific. And they sound so different that it makes me think that there might be a possibility that there are several readers in this. But I don't think there are. I think it's one reader.
I think the person is just a very good voice actor.
Yeah. But the main reason I bring up the audiobook is because when I was listening to it, it sounded very old school 40s or 50s mystery kind of thing. Like that black and white TV with the detective on the door sign, like that kind of storytelling.
For sure.
And even though the story moved quickly, the actual telling of the story felt very paced and like you were moving, like almost like on one of those moving walkways at the airport. Like you're just kind of slowly going and you see the whole world kind of flying by.
Right, and you don't realize that it's flying by. Because I didn't realize that I had gone through several chapters already.
Right.
Until I had to stop and do something else and was like, wait, I'm already on chapter 6? What?
Yeah. So I do like how this book is going so far. But what are your thoughts on Domingo? Because that's the main character that we have right now, and that's the character that we know the most about.
Right. I feel like when we were first introduced to Domingo, I felt like he was very snooty and like a know-it-all.
Like pretentious.
Yes, very pretentious.
Yeah, I can definitely see that part. When I listened to Domingo's story, I kind of felt sad. He felt like a first-generation immigrant American trapped in that immigrant American mindset.
Right.
He reminds me of the parents of my friends who don't know how to speak their language anymore because their parents were too scared to teach them. Because a lot of the things that he talks about in this book that he's writing, which is kind of this subplot of the story,
right,
but a lot of it refers to how immigrants need to adjust to American society.
Right.
They need to like certain types of food. They need to change their names like Domingo to Sunday, or I forget some of the other names that he listed out, but to like Robert or like
to Abe or to Julia.
And so it's very much like, how do you fit into the American society? And so it feels like a very colonized mindset.
It's definitely a colonized mindset. He is for sure asking whoever is reading his notes to assimilate into American culture.
But it didn't feel fake. Like, that was the crazy thing I can see this person. Like, I can see Domingo and I can see his character because it feels so familiar to some of my friends and the parents that they had. So it was a very good character drawing all the way up to this point.
Yes.
I kind of love his tough ruggedness because it fits with the job that he has.
Absolutely.
Because even he explains it, like, you can't have too much sympathy or caring for people.
Totally.
You kind of have to be very rugged because otherwise you don't have this job and you don't make a paycheck and you don't support Mamang's Chinese eating habits. And
Chinese takeout habits. Yeah, for sure.
So I liked it. I thought Domingo was very interesting.
He's definitely a very complex character because besides his pretentiousness and his desire to make sure that immigrants assimilate so he doesn't end up catching them, he also has a tendency to be insecure, especially about his height and about his looks.
Because he does mention that quite often.
Yes.
I did think the other side of him, though, was how caring he was. Because the reason he is writing this book is because he cares about people. He wants people to fit in here and live a good life. Because he knows how bad the life in Philippines were, or from the other people he captured, maybe in Mexico or Russia or places like that. And he knows the need of coming to America and trying to pursue that American dream. Because when he moved here, it was probably like 1970s, 1980s, if we're assuming.
Probably the 80s, for sure.
And that was a time that was very different. And
it's very difficult in the Philippines. Very difficult to leave the Philippines.
Right. But not only that, the American dream was very much a thing. Like, you could come here and you could be a postal worker, which is what a lot of different Filipino people did. And honestly, a lot of other races, because it was a government job that set you up for pension. You can live that life of working generally about 40 hours, maybe some overtime, 50 hours, and support your entire family. Very different now. But the world that Domingo comes from, it makes sense with the person that he is characterized to be.
Absolutely.
So knowing all this, what are your predictions going into the next read?
Going into the next read, I think Christian Price has more info than he's sharing with Domingo.
Like good info, bad info?
I think bad info. I think the ticket to Manila was a decoy for something else that Christian did. I don't think Cutter is the one who's behind all this.
You think Cutter's innocent?
I don't think Cutter's innocent, but I don't think Cutter is as cunning.
What do you think happened with the kidney transplant? Because that's the thing that's kind of left up in the air within the storytelling currently. Right.
So because of what we are told in the story, I think that because of the lockdown and because Domingo quote unquote lost her, I think Domingo is the reason why she left and didn't have to go through the surgery.
I feel like there was some portion in the read that talked about how Monica actually escaped from the hospital.
Right.
And maybe it was in reference to the lockdown, but it also sounded like maybe someone was trying to kill her still at that point. Like, in my mind, the story I built up was General Reed faking his own death with the kidney thing just to bring Monica back into the equation and then murder her in the hospital?
That could be a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's true now.
No, not now. So now I don't know what's happening.
For sure.
I do think that Christian Price is involved. I feel like Christian Price is actually the innocent one, though. I feel like Cutter has more to do with it.
Okay.
But with as sketchy as Cutter is, with his money issues and all that,
right,
I feel like usually when we read stories, that's the character that I would point my finger at first and say that he's the bad person, and then ends up being not really that bad of a person.
Fair.
So I have no idea. But it's interesting, and that's kind of the point of a thriller and a mystery.
Yes.
So we won't know until we go into our next read, and that next read is going to be...
For those who are using the physical book, that's pages 76 to 140, and for everyone, that's chapters 10 through chapter 18.
Yep. And so we're going to be going through that, whether you're doing audiobook or the physical copy. I'm hoping you're enjoying this as much as we are. If you have your own suspicions or you feel like you have the nose on what's going on, you can share with us, and how can people do so?
You can reach out to us through email at asianbookclubpod@gmail.com, or you can join the conversation on Instagram at asianbookclubpod.
Yeah, and you can also check out our website, which is at asianbookclubpod.com, and that has our bookshop, which has our past reads, our current read, and books that we plan to read in the future.
And a great way to support us on this podcast is to rate, review, and subscribe.
Otherwise, make sure to be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat!
Bye.
Bye.